And we're back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast, bringing you our third segment, which is going to be talking about Spencer Torkelson and his season for the Detroit Tigers, and him getting sent down by the team. So yeah, let's get straight into it. So, of course, a little background on Spencer Torkelson. He was the first overall pick by the Tigers in the 2020 draft, a guy who kind of came out of nowhere in college with Arizona State and became the clear-cut first overall pick, being a power-heavy first baseman for the team, and again, clearly becoming the first overall pick. I mean, there's really no debate. I remember watching the draft, everyone knew who would go first overall. Was looked at as a really, really talented first base prospect, of course. I mean, he was the first overall pick in the draft, of course, so I was thinking that this would be a elite power bat for the Tigers rather quickly. I mean, he's coming out of college, so probably, only 1 or 2 years in the minors, like most college players, especially hitters. And it just hasn't been the case. And we're seeing it today, having the clear starting job for first base in Detroit, and he is getting sent down. He's now in year 3, age 24, and it is going to be interesting where the Tigers do go from here. So, looking at Torkelson's stats right now. So, first of all, his weighted runs created plus is at a 71, very below average, obviously. Not really what you want to see, especially for a first baseman. Maybe if he was a center fielder who was bringing defense like a Harrison Bader, like a Kevin Kiermaier, it would be different, but he's first baseman, so even if he was playing good defense, no one would care. So that's not good. His walk percentage is down 3 from last year, from 10% to 7%, which is not good. His strikeout percentage is at 24, so significantly higher than his walk percentage, so that's not a good strikeout to walk ratio. His ISO is down from last year at 129. His BABIP is at a reasonable number as well, 2.53, so it's not even like he's getting real unlucky. And his max exit velocity so far is 109, which is around the same as last year, but his barrel percentage is really, really rough at 4.6%, 4.5% actually, so that's 10% below from last year. His barrel percentage is 38.7%. I mean, absolutely horrible. That's over 10% less than last year, so he's not barreling up the ball, he's not hitting it as hard, really having a rough season so far right now for Detroit, and yeah, definitely is unfortunate. Now, when looking at this guy, you also want to look at the batting ball stats. Line drive percentage is down from last year, ground balls are up. After that, his fly ball percentage is up, which is good though, and he's pulling the ball more, which is also good, but he's hitting it out to opposite field less. And his hard hit percentage is down significantly again, like I said, from last year, which is not something that's great. So overall, looking at Torkelson, it doesn't really seem like this is a guy who is just having a rough season. It seems like a guy who's had a rough go of it in the MLB. Now, last year, he wasn't great, but he also wasn't bad. I mean, looking at him last year, his weighted runs created plus was at 107, which isn't horrible, and before that, it was at 75. So this is a guy who, since coming up, hasn't really found his stride, and while he wasn't bad, I think a lot of people were expecting him to finally break out this year. First year wasn't great. People were like, okay, you know what? He's getting used to MLB pitching. Tigers don't have a lot of good players, don't have a lot of expectations on him. It's fine. Last year, okay, fine season. Not exactly what you want from a first baseman who's supposed to be a big power hitter, but, he had good home run numbers. Next year, that's when he'll really break out. Third year, he'll finally figure it out. He'll go from that 107 to 125, 130, becoming a really elite batter. And he just hasn't. And the Tigers sending him down, I think, is a big showing of how they feel about him right now and how they think his future is going to end up with this team. And I think the question is, do we think he'll ever go back to being the Spencer Torkelson in college? Do we think he'll ever find it, quote unquote? Do we ever think he'll end up being a really, really good player again? And I'm not sure. I think that there's still a lot of talent left in that body. I think there's a lot of talent left in Spencer Torkelson, but it just hasn't been accessed yet. And for a first overall pick, and for a Tigers team that was supposed to be good this year and supposed to kind of surprise a lot of people, try to be competitive, it's very unfortunate. You were expecting Torkelson to be that power-hitting first baseman in the middle of your order, end up being really good, and he just hasn't been. I mean, looking at this Tigers team right now, they haven't been horrible, but at the same time, they're fourth in their division, and they're a game under 500. They're very mediocre. And let's say if Torkelson was doing better, let's say if he was the power-hitting first baseman they wanted him to be, how much better would they be? Where would they be in the standing? It's interesting to think about, and it is an interesting dynamic. So overall, it is going to be interesting to watch Torkelson over the next few years and seeing what does end up happening. I think there could potentially be a way for him to get a fresh start. If the Tigers do end up shopping him at this deadline or in the offseason, I think that will be a drastic change from obviously where he came from, being the first overall pick, but I wouldn't be that shocked. I wouldn't be that surprised. I would think, okay, you know what, at least they're trying something with him, and at least it's better for both parties. Not even sure what his trade value is at this point, but I think a lot of people would be interested in Torkelson with just the amount of talent he has. So it'll be interesting to watch this year, seeing what does happen with Torkelson, but it's very unfortunate that he is playing this way and he is being this underwhelming for the team. Now, another thing I want to talk about is just the impact on the team. Now, again, not only Torkelson, but a lot of their young core that I was expecting to be really good has just not performed. Colt Keith, who I expected to be very good for the Tigers, who got a big extension before in the offseason to be a big part of this Tigers team, has not been good, has a weighted runs created plus of 67, which is not good, definitely not. Parker Meadows was so bad he was sent down, and looking at this Tigers team, I thought, Colt Keith would start at second and third base, you would have Parker Meadows be the center fielder, and Spencer Torkelson be the first base. 3 young bats that I was very high on, that I thought were going to do a lot of damage with this team and just with this core. But they have been heavily underperforming, and if they didn't, how much better could this Tigers team have been? Jack Flaherty has really found a stride with the pitching staff, and Tarek Skubal has been every bit as advertised in the starting rotation. I picked him for Cy Young, as a lot of people did, and he really has not. And he definitely has lived up to that hype. So it's just an interesting situation to think about how much better this Tigers team could have been if their young players simply lived up to this to the potential they had and ended up doing really, really well. But they haven't, and I guess we'll never know. But mainly I'm interested in Torkelson with the amount of promise he had coming out of the draft and for this Tigers team. I really want him to be able to find it and really want him to be able to end up being a really good player for this Tigers team, be the face of the franchise they want, be the next Miggy that they really were expecting. High standards, yes, but he's the first overall pick. I mean, I think it's very fair to put these things on him. He knew what was happening when he got drafted first overall. He knew what was going to happen when the Tigers called his name in 2020. So it'll be very interesting to watch Torkelson and this Tigers team's future. And going into next year as well, how will this young core play and how much time will the Tigers give them? Because you got a lot of good players on this team. It's not like the clock is ticking real fast, but at the same time, you'd like to get it going eventually. It's a lot of good teams in your division, so it's going to be very, very interesting to watch. So that is it for our third segment here, talking about Spencer Torkelson and the Detroit Tigers and him being sent down. We're going into our fourth segment, which is going to be talking about the Blue Jays and some trade rumors involving them, mainly 2 of their stars, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette. So yeah, we'll talk about that, and we'll see you after the break. So thanks, and bye.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC.